Welcome to the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools Board of Education Candidates Forum. My name is Reg Hildebrand. I am a professor of Afro-American Studies and History at UNC Chapel Hill, and I will be moderator for this event, which is being sponsored by the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools PTA Council and the Chapel Hill Carrboro NAACP Education Committee and the Chapel Hill Carrboro chapter of PAGE. Three organizations that may have different constituencies, all working and planning together to make this event both effective and inclusive. We thank our candidates who have offered their services to help shape educational policy. On behalf of all of the sponsoring organizations, I would acknowledge and express our regrets that scheduling has caused this event to be taking place at the beginning of the High Holy Day of Rosh Hashanah. Let me begin to outline what we'll be doing. The names and backgrounds of the organizations are in the handouts that you have received. Also, in order to save time, we will not be introducing the distinguished candidates, but have asked them instead to prepare a written statement about their background and vision for the district, and we ask you all to please read those statements. During the first hour, will consist of questions that have been submitted in advance by the public and that have been selected by the three sponsoring organizations. These questions are available in the handout that you have, and I believe they've also been provided to all of the candidates. If, as you look at those questions, you find that there is one that you would like to ask that is not listed there, you can write your question on one of the index cards that have been and are still being distributed to you. And if you would like to put the question yourself to the candidates, please also write your name on the card. Otherwise, someone will ask. As you know, ask it for you. As you know, without my saying, that although we would like to ask all of the questions that we receive, and we'll be collecting after the fifth question, and I will give you a warning when that's approaching. But we will only time will only permit us to answer some small portion of those questions. The second hour will be your questions being put to the council, to the candidates for the school board. Here is the format of how the questions will be asked. Each candidate will be asked, will have a chance to answer each question. Three of the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and the remaining three will have 1 minute. As we cycle through the questions, the order in which each candidate is asked the question and the time that they have will change, so by the end, everyone will have the same amount of time to answer questions. When you are one of the persons with a 1 minute answer, we ask that you, if possible, not merely repeat what has been said, but to add something to that, and it is perfectly acceptable to say, I agree, and then we'll pass on to something else. After the sixth question, there will be a 5 minute break, just for 5 minutes before we go to the second part of the program. This forum will be broadcast live on public access TV and rebroadcast on WCHL radio tomorrow at 7 p.m. We ask the candidates and each person who is asking questions to please speak into the microphones so that you can be heard on the air. And we ask that you now turn off your cell phone so that they will not be heard at all. And let us begin. The first question, and we do ask and have spoken to all of the candidates to keep their eye on the timekeeper, and we hope that things will move smoothly. The first question comes from the PTA, and it will go to James Barrett, Jamesetta Bedford, and Mia Burrows in that order for 2 minutes.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Gary Wallach. I have a 9th grader at Carborough High, and I've been with the PTA Council for several years now. The question is fairly short and direct, so hopefully you won't have a lot to think about or discuss. Many parents feel that the communication between them, the district, and the board is lacking. As an example, when a member of the public comes to comment at a board meeting, there is no feedback. No follow-up questions are asked by the board to clarify their understanding, no comments are made, and no contact information is obtained from the constituent. This is correct parliamentary procedure, but it is hardly a model for effective communication. Would you be willing to attend regular, periodic meetings sponsored by the PTA Council where an open back and forth discussion could take place on issues of parent, teacher, and student concerns?
Thank you, Gary. And thank all of you for being here and watching at home. I think my first answer is yes. That's a straightforward answer to a straightforward question. But I think it goes deeper than that. In some ways, the question doesn't mention teachers, for example. And you mentioned being at Carborough High, and that's certainly a concern. What we've seen at Carborough High recently, lack of two-way communication between the board and teachers. And I think this is one way that we can address that. I certainly recognize this is a problem and think that the board should do something to address it. There are other ways that could be addressed. Procedure at SIT meetings, for example, which is very similar to what the Chapel Hill Town Council does as well, is to have the board sometimes when they choose, it's up to them based on the comment, but they can make a choice as to whether to accept an opinion, refer it to staff, to bring back for future agenda, those kind of choices. It at least, you don't necessarily want to get into a two-way conversation during the middle of every board meeting. They go on forever. But at least you have some acknowledgement that the board has heard the comments and the promise of future action on those comments as well. I also think this is an area, I know there are many on the board, I suppose majority because it doesn't happen today, but another way to address this would be have more board committees to address specific items. Not a whole bunch of standing committees, but I think some ad hoc work on really important issues that require community input would allow us to have more of that back and forth conversation, not taking up a full board's time every 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And thank you. The next question will be asked by the NAACP, and it will go to Ms. Burrows, Ms. Streeter, and Ms. Bedford for 2-minute answers in that order, followed by Mr. Kelly, Mr. Barnett, and Mr. Castellano in that order. NAACP.
Hello, my name is Lalani Shongode, and I am a member of this community and a member of the NAACP's Education Committee. My question is, as you may know, African American Hispanic students are lagging behind their counterparts in academic achievement at alarming rates across the country. Please explain what you feel are the needs, challenges, and barriers that impact the population overall's achievement in Chapel Hill Carborough schools. If your response to this question includes multiple strategies, how would you rank them in importance? And in other words, what should our schools focus on first to improve those achievements of these students?
I think the number one issue that we have here is low expectations. We as a society, extending down into the classrooms, do not have the same expectations for particularly our students of color, and that's just not acceptable to me. I think that Dr. Forcella has talked about some great things in terms of making sure that we expect that every kid can grow. And I expect that he will be bringing that throughout the district over time, and that will really help. I don't believe we should be blaming what happens at home. I think we have the kids for a period of time in our schools, and we need to focus on doing the right things during that time with what we're given to grow each kid, absolutely, as Mike said, but also to have high expectations that every one of them can succeed. I'm really glad that PAGE is here with the NAACP, for example, because the under-identification of gifted kids amongst those minority kids is really a problem.
Thank you. And the next question will come from a representative of PAGE, which will go to Ms. Bedford, Ms. Castellano, and Ms. Streeter for 2 minutes in that order, followed by Mr. Barrett, Ms. Burrows, and Mr. Kelly for 1-minute answers.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca McMillan, and I am both vice chair of PAGE, and also I am one of the parent co-chairs of the Gifted Program Advisory Council for the district. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Thanks to No Child Left Behind, American school districts, including ours, focus almost exclusively on the percentage of students that are proficient on end-of-grade tests. North Carolina's 8th grade math tests rank 40th most rigorous in the nation. If 100% of Chapel Hill Carborough students scored proficient on the 40th most rigorous test in our country, whose math education is ranked 24th in the world, would you consider our district successful? What goals, other than 100% proficiency, should our district strive for? How should we measure progress toward these goals? What should the board do to make sure that these other goals are taken as seriously as bringing up all students to a minimum standard?
I'm going to double check here since we're making mistakes. The question was about the goals other than 100% proficiency. And for me, if we're going to have high expectations for every kid, the obvious goal is to measure growth. And we as a district have begun to get better at that. We certainly, the board is looking basically once a year at a set of growth metrics, which are very interesting and show a lot of really good data at a detailed level. The SIT teams are beginning to use that at their school level, but the question is, why is that not being applied at the teacher level? Teachers need to focus on the same things. If we're going to meet our district goals, which I believe should be 100% growth of expected growth for every kid, then we ought to be doing that all the way down to a teacher level to make sure that it happens. And one of the really interesting things, I say 100% expected growth. Our standard actually is only 60% of kids should grow an expected year every year. Unacceptable to me.
Thank you. The fourth question will be posed by a representative of the PTA, and it will go first to Ms. Streeter, then Mr. Kelly, and then Ms. Castellano for 2-minute answers in that order, or something like that. And then, and then 1-minute answers from Ms. Burrows, Ms. Bedford, and Mr. Barrett.
I'll just give a blanket apology for any future oops. But in response to this question, I will say that organizations.
But I haven't asked it yet.
Sorry. We're just like ready to go. All right, you can ask your question.
Wait, I have a small announcement. After this round, the index cards with questions will be collected. So if you have one to hand in, there's a receptacle at the back. Hi. Over the past few years, the board has developed policies around bullying and honors hybrid classes, among many others. We know from the news over the last few months that the implementations of these policies in particular have fallen somewhat short of the goals for them. And in fact, it has come to light that some of the policies may have been seen more as a suggested course of action than as a requirement set by the board. Do you agree that communication and faithfulness in implementation of board policy decisions are areas of possible improvement? And if so, what will you seek to change in the future?
I think the biggest factor in this, and Ms. Streeter talked about it a couple of times, and that is the leadership in the building. I don't think we can stress enough the importance of having a strong leader who is communicating. I mean, we talked about communication is important, but it only happens if that leader in the principal's office is really leading. And that means leading the teachers in doing what we expect them to do. I would also add a bit of a counterbalance to what the board has said so far, and that's that we should continue to be open to experimentation, and we should. I mean, it should be within structure. It should be communicated both ways, and we should all know about what's happening so that parents have the right expectations as well. But we need to be open to trying new and different things. And, you know, maybe they're pilots or maybe there's something different, but we want our kids to be creative. We need to be creative as a board as well.
Thank you. And if there's anyone who still has a question on an index card, if you just lift them so one of the volunteers can come get them during this question, which will come from the representative of the NAACP. And we'll go first to Ms. Castellano, then Mr. Barrett, and Mr. Kelly for 2-minute answers, followed by Ms. Bedford, Ms. Streeter, and Ms. Burrows.
Hit me.
Good evening and thanks for coming. My name is James Barrett. I'm the parent of a 6th grader at Colbrook Middle School. I'm also the vice president of the NAACP Chapel Hill Caldwell branch, and I'd like to take a moment to thank Paige and Emily, the PTA, and the NAACP for collaborating together on this event. Specifically, what types of support, monitoring of best practices, gathering of efficient data, and following through are you aware of in other communities throughout the nation that are producing positive academic results for young African American and Hispanic students? And how can our school better partner with those communities to create and provide an effective support network for students?
Thank you.
I love the idea of looking at our back door because I have a friend of mine who teaches at McDougall Elementary, and she has a peer of hers that she's described as, over the past year, decided it was maybe a second-year teacher, decided she was going to make it her mission to solve the achievement gap in her classroom. And my understanding is she was successful, but it took 80 hours a week from her. It took a lot of late-night meetings with parents because that was when they were available. It took a tremendous amount of work. It's not a sustainable, it's not an extendable model, but are we having a conversation with her to find out what did work? What worked in our community? It's not based on research in other communities that don't look like ours, but we have an example of something that did work and used across the district. I've heard stories of teachers that have really good ideas for how to address things, and they are, if they speak up at a meeting where particularly a Lincoln Center staff person is there, they get told that they shouldn't do that because it's going counter to what the board has said as policy. I think we need to encourage those ideas. I think we need to encourage ideas sharing between teachers. I know that nobody has extra time, certainly, to go to meetings, but there are ways through technology, even a wiki, if anybody knows what that means, would allow teachers to input an idea that they've got that's shared and can be used. And then we should recognize the teachers that are sharing the good ideas and are being used by all sorts of teachers. So I think we have the ability to recognize teachers for what they do and the good ideas that they have, and we need to take advantage of that.
All right,
Thank you. And following this question, we will have a break for exactly 5 minutes. Were there any cards left, or just raise them high? And all right. This final question in this round will come from a representative of PAGE and goes first to Mr. Kelly, then Ms. Burrows, and Mr. Barrett for 2-minute answers, followed by Ms. Streeter, Ms. Castellano, and Ms. Bedford for 1-minute answers.
Good evening.
My name is Xiaopei Huang. I am the mother of 2 children in the school district. I work as a cancer researcher at Duke University Medical Center. So my question for the panel is this. Investment capital and over the past decade, jobs have increasingly flowed to where the best and most cost-effective skills reside, wherever in the world the knowledge workers may be. What will you do to enable our students to effectively compete in the global marketplace? And what changes will you make to increase the STEM skills, which is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math, creativity, and innovation? And how will you overcome the inherent and systemic challenges that may prevent these necessary changes from being implemented right away to make an impact on our future workforce and economic prosperity?
Thanks.
So I am JCBARR on Twitter. Thanks, Mia, for that opening. I actually think this question, I look at it a little differently because Aaron Nelson, the Chamber of Commerce here in Chapel Hill, likes to describe our biggest export in Chapel Hill is well-educated children. Right? We actually do a pretty good job when you compare to other areas, so much so that we can't have enough jobs here in Chapel Hill to keep all these kids here. So I think it's an area that we do okay in. I think one of the things that we need to do, if we believe this is a priority for us, is we need to make sure it's reflected in our budget that way. I don't think our budget process is very transparent, and it doesn't appear, because we can't really tell, but it doesn't appear to align very well to our priorities. We talk about areas to cut, and we look at them in terms of our priorities, but we never really look from the ground up at what we're spending money on, and are we focusing on things that we believe in, such as STEM. Certainly reflected in the fact that we've changed how we do elementary science education and eliminated those positions. And I also think that we as a board need to make sure that we're very open to using things like position swaps if we've not made this a budget priority, where a particular school feels very strongly about this. The FPG example, where they believe they've got a very strong program in science that is doing a lot of really good things for their students and their population, we need to be responsive to as a board and make sure that continues to be supported.
Again, thank you. And after a break of exactly 5 minutes, we will return with some of the questions that you have submitted by index card. Thank you.
Now the fun begins.
Break, we received some feedback that it might be helpful to talk about the board seats that are open this year because the election is a little different this year than it has been in the past. There is one 2-year seat open, and James Etta Bedford is running unopposed for that seat. Thank you. So you get 1 vote for that seat. I wonder who you're going to cast that vote for. And then in addition to that, there are 4 4-year seats open, and you will get 4 votes for those other 4-year seats. So we hope that clarifies things for everyone. And now we'll turn it back over to Dr. Hildebrand.
And early voting.
Oh, yes, sorry. Early voting. Early voting is very helpful to everyone because the more people vote early, the shorter the lines are on election day. So if you can vote early, you'll be helping a lot of people who might be rushing over on their lunch hour or before work. There is information about early voting on the back table, and it begins October 20th.
Thank you, Emily. The representatives of the organizations have been working furiously in the back, going through the index cards, trying to select some questions that we will now present to the candidates. The first question will be posed by someone who has wanted to present it herself. The format will be each candidate will have 1 minute to answer these questions. And for the first question, which will be coming soon. We will, it will be Bedford, Castellanos, Streeter, Barrett, Burrows, and Kelly. Right. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Breaker. I'm a teacher at Carborough High School. My question today relates to the new state criteria on which teachers are evaluated. Last fall, we adopted the 2011 new state criteria for teacher evaluation, in which teacher leadership is the #1 standard on which we are currently evaluated. Our question is, given that teacher leadership and distinguished teachers being described as those who are actively participating in and advocating for decision-making structures that work for students, how can teachers be included in these really urgent decision-making processes of our school district? Do you feel as if we have systems in which that input is currently solicited and valued? And what are your thoughts about seeking and honoring teachers' expertise, specifically if that is how we are evaluated as professionals? Thank you.
What I heard you ask was about providing input into district policies, and I think the school improvement teams is an important avenue for that. I think often we view them as parent groups, but they're really supposed to be a joint group. In my opinion, school improvement teams that come to board meetings and provide feedback to the board. Certainly, teachers are often welcome as public at the board meetings, but again, that process is sort of broken in terms of how the school board provides feedback and how that's working. Which is why, I'll say per previous answer, I think committee kind of structure where you can have more two-way back and forth with all the interested stakeholders, certainly including all the teachers that are interested to be involved, is very appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Breaker. We really do appreciate the work that teachers are doing on the front lines of this struggle, and for you to be here to participate is also very much appreciated. I will now ask some questions that have come, and bear with me as I get through these, and I apologize in advance. These are, we have 1 minute to answer these, and I know all of these. You could spend much more time than that, so please bear with us and try to get through these. The first question I'm going to read will go to Burrows, then Streeter, then Bedford, then Kelly, then Barrett, then Castellano. The question is, what would you make a priority within these multiple alternative paths? And you might want to take some notes on this. What would you make a priority within these multiple alternative paths? And the paths are: 1, magnet schools, wraparound, schools within schools, the trades, gifted nurturing, middle college, CTE, career exploration. I'll repeat those: 1, magnet schools, wraparound, schools within schools, the trades, gifted nurturing, middle college, and CTE, career exploration. What would you make a priority within these multiple alternatives paths? And how do you rate our district's performance in STEM education? If you can do that in a minute.
I'll pick up on what Mike said about middle college. I just recently learned about it, and I think it's a great program for the kids that can get there. Certainly it has its challenges, and I think we need to address that. We also need to publicize it better. But the kids that are in the program are kids that aren't being served in other ways in our traditional classrooms. And so we need to encourage that and continue to do more of that. On the question of STEM, Mike brought up a lot of really good points. I would just use an example. We have a lot of great resources in this community. I know my daughter last year in her 3rd grade class had a professor from Duke come in and do chemistry experiments for the kids, and they just loved it. I mean, you could not imagine any, just the cool stuff that you see. Yeah, you can see it on TV, but to see it in the classroom was just really exciting for them. And we need to take advantage of those resources and make sure they're available to all kids.
Question goes to Barrett, Bedford, excuse me, Burroughs, Castellano, Kelly, and Streeter in that order. And again, just 1 minute. This is a rigorous question. Given the harsh realities of the current financial budget climate, what are your top budget priorities? Please name 3 programs you would never cut and 3 programs you would be willing to cut.
Rigorous question, and I don't think I have all the answers here. I think this is the budget priorities need to be set by the community after a lot of discussions, and I think, as I said before, it goes back to our process in a lot of ways. We do not have a good process to build from the ground up, and actually, since I have a little time here, I'll use it. Chapel Hill, I learned last night at the 2020 visioning session, is changing how they do budgeting. And the town manager told me afterwards, he said he's offered to Dr. Forcella some technical assistance in how to do that. And I think that's great for the town, and I think it's great for our schools as well. How do we build our budget to match our community priorities, what's most effective for all of our kids from the ground up? That'll make the conversations a lot easier because you won't be pitting groups against each other. I think our school district has done a really good job of pitting groups against each other in the past, and that's not the way I would approach this question.
The next question is, it goes in this order to Kelly, Burroughs, Barrett, Streeter, Castellano, and Bedford. It's a lengthy question, so you may have to focus in on the part that you think most clearly expresses your view about the subject as a whole, most substantively does. But listen as I read this. For many years, our district has been committed to a policy of using in-class differentiation as the primary tool for meeting the diverse learning needs of our students, which can range from 3 through 6 grade levels in a single classroom. Do you differentiation by itself a sufficient tool to meet these widely varied learning needs? If not, what would you add? If you do consider differentiation sufficient, please grade A through F the job we are currently doing in the district at implementing differentiation in our classrooms. What, in addition to move teacher training and differentiation, would you recommend we add to our toolkit to improve our ability to meet all our students' learning needs?
No, I don't think it's sufficient. I think, in addition, we have not implemented it very well. I was surprised that Ms. Bedford didn't include it on our list of things that we've, over time, done really poorly and consistently, because that's absolutely the case with differentiation. But I don't think it's by itself sufficient. I think clustering is certainly one thing we need to do, but we also need to do that very flexibly. If we're going to really grow each and every kid, you can't put one label on them that they're going to live with them forever. They need to be addressed as individuals and pushed as individuals and have the highest expectations for each and every one of those individuals. And yes, that's hard. And we're asking a lot of teachers to do that. And one of the ways, clustering certainly is one of the ways, we hopefully make that a little easier for the teachers, but it's really important that we do address each and every kid as an individual.
Thank you all for going to the heart of that question. We didn't make it easy for you. The next question goes to Castellano, Barrett, Kelly, Bedford, Streeter, and Burroughs. The question, we have SROs, school resource officers, in our middle and high schools. While some parents feel this helps to ensure the safety of their children, I believe that it may lead the other members of the staff to abdicate responsibility for discipline to the resource officer, which actually makes schools less safe. Given the recent questions raised regarding Miranda rights in an SRO interview, do you think it is appropriate to have the same individual in the lunch hall asking students to be quiet, also informing them that they have the right to remain silent? Are we creating welcoming communities in our schools if the individual that may most frequently contact a family is a peace officer and not a teacher? Is that the message we intend to send?
I know there's a lot of support amongst the middle school principals for this. I'm not a huge fan. I've heard too many stories beyond the ones that Dr. Hildebrand mentioned of kids that are intimidated, particularly African American kids that have been maybe not the level of mistreatment, but certainly a level of expectation put upon them by having an interaction with a police officer when all they're doing is being kids. And all they're doing is having interactions with their kids that I'm not talking about bullying, I'm not talking about, bad things, but because that school resource officer is the one who deals with those situations, normal everyday interactions between kids, it gets escalated to a level that sets up an expectation for particularly those African American kids that they are going to interact with the police a lot. And I don't care for that. And so I understand the need at times, but I think we've got to be very careful about how we use them.
Thank you. The next part of the forum will be the lightning round. We'll ask you questions, and we'll start for the first one with Mr. Barrett and then go down the panel. And next we'll start with Ms. Bedford and go in turn. These will require simply and solely a yes or no answer. The purpose of these is merely to put you on the record concerning some issues that have been determined by the groups vetting these questions that can be answered in this kind of way. First question, and beginning with Mr. Barrett. Despite not you personally, but all of you, despite your reassurances in response to question 1 tonight regarding communication and exchange with all stakeholders, we received numerous additional questions concerning communication with all stakeholders. Will you commit to creating new channels of communication so that all stakeholders feel their viewpoints have been considered and understood? Yes or no?
Absolutely yes.
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 Yes, but I'd like to effectively use the ones we have in place, which I don't think are being used effectively.
Okay, yes or no?
Yes.
I will consider it.
Right. The next question, beginning with Ms. Bedford. Should the district implement pay to participate for extracurricular athletics?
No.
Most likely no, but that's not a yes or no question.
Again, not a yes or no question, but yes, if it meant no athletics for any of our children, I think we could figure out a way as a community to make it work.
No, with a asterisk.
No, I will not.
No. But it's a tough one.
Right. Beginning with Ms. Burrows, the question is, do you support the 1/4 cent sales tax referendum on the ballot this fall?
Yes, yes, yes.
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 Beginning with Ms. Castellano. Should the district charge students for driver's ed next year?
If that's one of the things being considered on the budget for cuts, yes.
No, we can't.
No.
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 No, most likely asterisk.
Beginning with Mr. Kelly. Do you support the merger of the Orange County school system and the Chapel Hill Carrboro City School districts? I'm just
no.
reading the question.
No.
No.
Never. No.
No.
Right. And the last question, beginning with Ms. Streeter. Do you support district funding for pre-K classes? Do you support district funding for pre-K classes?
Yes.
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 More.
Good, good.
I can't
Right.
believe somebody asked.
What we will do now is have your concluding statements, which will take also 1 minute. They are in this order: Streeter, Kelly, Castellano, Burrows, Bedford, and Barrett.
Thank you for hosting this forum. From my history with all of these groups, I understand why you've come together and applaud your public efforts here. I would also like to challenge you to continue to work together. Talking with Margaret Samuels the other day, I suggested that you should have a regular advocacy summit where you guys could share strategies for how to approach the district, both individually and for your collective groups, because all students need your voices in the process. All too often we see groups that are pitted against each other, and my hope is as a board member that I can bring changes to our district that will improve that situation. I also hope that improve the schools so that you will need to advocate less. That would be a nice thing, right? That we shouldn't have to push from the outside to see every student grow in an environment that consistently lives up to our values that we share in Chapel Hill and Carrboro. I think we share common goals, and I look forward to seeing it happen from the board. Thank you.
Thank all of you. This brings this remarkable forum to a close. We thank all of the candidates, not only for your thoughtful answers, but for your willingness to serve in this important capacity. We thank the organizations that have made this happen, who've worked together, the PTA and PAGE and the NAACP groups that have chosen not to be pitted against each other, but to work together, and that can only be to everybody's benefit. We also thank WCHL and Public Access Television for carrying this event so that it be available to those who could not be here tonight. And most of all, we thank all of you who are watching or here for your interest in this important issue, and of course, urge you to vote. Thank you.